Welcome to Social 420. I want to thank you for joining me today. My name is Jonah Neoma, and I have a special guest today that I'd love to interview and get some stories out of. His name's Ed, and he's been a long-time advocate and face in the movement, I feel, of legitimizing and helping provide access to information and support for medical marijuana users and hemp advocates. So thank you for joining.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
Yeah, definitely. So could you just give a little brief history of what first brought you into your relationship to cannabis? Can you share that?
Well, yeah, sure. I think as a young man, I guess in my about 18, 19 years old, my cousin introduced me to cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I told him he shouldn't be doing that. But he shared it with me, and that's how I was introduced to it. And then over the years, I found that it was a great alternative to what a lot of my friends are doing and binge drinking and things like that. So it always seemed like something that kind of suited me fine.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. How old were you then?
Just a kid.
Just a kid.
Like 18.
18, nice.
Yeah, that's when I first started.
Nice. Great.
Probably like a lot of folks.
Oh yeah. Usually started at that age. Yeah, definitely. I've heard that you in New Mexico you worked with the Normal chapter.
Sure. Yeah, we started with Keith Straub. He was the founder of Normal.
Okay.
He came down to New Mexico and helped me get a chapter started there. So it was the first Normal chapter in New Mexico. And so we were real happy to get it going and started working with the legislative efforts, primarily the Lynn Pearson Therapeutic Research Program, to get that reenacted to allow medical marijuana back in New Mexico, which has come to fruition now.
Okay, great. What are some of the issues and problems you feel like you faced as an advocate of trying to legitimize medical marijuana in your life?
Probably, I mean, the question kind of touched on it, legitimizing the effort, because I think that's what's done even now in Colorado, where we have a constitutional right to medical marijuana. They try to diffuse and keep the argument going as if there's still a debate about that. And so I think that's one of the things that's always been hard, is to try to keep focus and keep on message, and and realize we have an enemy that has a financial incentive in not seeing our cause.
Well, within the medical marijuana movement today, within Colorado, how do you see the people or patients, I guess, or dispensaries could make a change for the better within it? So,
in regard to how they're perceived and things like that, I think would be a lot is just to be more of a more legitimate operating business. A lot of them they couldn't wait to get the leaf on the front door. And so many things like that don't serve the best interest. I think so. Maybe we're getting a little more of a model of really medicinal and keep it where it's at. Keep it where it should be.
Yeah, and that I agree, and that touched on something for me too about how to legitimize and how to legitimize and for how can someone truly be legitimate. It's a pretty hard area in any state that has medical marijuana. One, because it's still the federal ban is still intact, and even within the states that have the medical laws, there's still criminal persecution of someone that possesses it for non-medical needs, and then there's all kinds of areas, it seems to be within in California and within Colorado, where it's hard for any patient to ever be always legal, or even a carrier dispensary to really operate in a way, and the regulations are always changing. So
I think you hit on it. It's by design. If you keep moving the target, it's hard to stay focused and accomplish what you want to accomplish. I think.
So what, from your opinion, Ed, would you see being a solution to that, the trouble between state and federal laws and between in-state jurisdiction?
I think I worked with a group in New Mexico called the Drug Policy Alliance, and their approach, I think, was one noteworthy. They would work with media. They knew all the media contacts. They knew who people to get in front of, because quite often the media, they just kind of give their talking points that are fed to them by both sides. And it was interesting in New Mexico when the federal opposition came up, how we talked about how that we exposed the fact that the federal government has a patent on cannabinoids, and they got that. In seeking that patent, they had to submit FDA approval that the FDA approved and had done research and concluded that it was medicine. So the irony that the federal government says it's not medicine when they hold a patent on medical marijuana, and they distribute through the United States Postal Service every month in this country medical marijuana that's grown in Mississippi to patients. The irony that that there is even opposition. See, I think it's just a straw man. I think that's what we have to do, is expose that straw man, that there's really not federal opposition. The federal government grows and distributes medical marijuana every month in this country. It's just not enough people know that. So I think it's letting the media and other people in Congress, know that that's the case. Some of these city council people that are voting, you tell them that the federal government grows medical marijuana and distributes it, they think you're crazy.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it flies in the face of the rhetoric.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the key into your question, is bringing the rhetoric and the reality together so they can, and putting them under the light of day so that people can't hide anymore.
Yeah, that's wise. Yeah, I feel that is one of the foundational solutions to this matter.
I think so.
Yeah.
Certainly one of them.
Yeah. Definitely.
That's one of
them. One thing I see is that there tends to be a division or a separation between the hemp plant and medical marijuana, which a lot of people don't even grasp it. Either one is the same thing, and then so I'd like to see a way to unify, all the aspects of society's relationship to the plant and the benefits that lie within within the plant for our nation. So how do you see in yourself, how can we bring those aspects together?
Wow, that's a big challenge, obviously.
Yeah,
but I think it's enlightening people, I think, and educating people enough to know that we had cars running around in this country before we struck oil, and it was running off hemp, and it's enlightening them, enlightening people to that, I think, because I've told that to some city council members, and they thought I was crazy. They literally couldn't go back and really think that before Spindletop there were cars running around, and Henry Ford designed them to run off hemp. They had hemp fields, and they ran off hemp. So now when we're looking at, we're throwing our children's lives away in senseless wars for oil when we know we don't need it. We've known we didn't need it for a long time ago, and that's where a lot of this prohibition comes back to. We signed treaties with Saudi Arabia back in the 50s that we would maintain prohibition of marijuana, because at that time Popular Mechanics magazine had just come out, called it the $1 billion crop, because they had found a way to thresh it and to actually produce it. And so that's a lot, I think, is we have to educate people and teach them that there's a lot of forces at work here, whether it's the prison guard lobby or whether it's the oil industries or whether it's pharmaceutical companies that want to keep this plant illegal for very specific reasons. And I think we have to take those reasons, which are typically greed and the things we don't like to be associate ourselves with, and exposing them for what they are. And then making it where people have to make that kind of choice. Do you really want to let a rapist get out of jail, or do you want to put a marijuana smoker in jail? Is that really what you want to do? And so that they have to be faced with the real choice instead of operating on sound bites and rhetoric that's so effective for them.
I agree. I mean, there's many idiosyncrasies and contradictions, to even obvious human morals and human rights that exist within the prohibition of marijuana. And to me, that's really what I feel is the main focus of this issue on my part is really human rights and civil rights and civil liberties. And there's many people that suffer needlessly, and our environment suffers needlessly due to the lack of availability to the cannabis plant within our country, the lack of ability for farmers to cultivate it, the lack of ability for this plant to be used for fuel, the lack of the ability for the plant to be utilized for medicines for people, and then the persecution of people that live within a culture that is proven that it cannot be stopped. I mean, it's existed since, the 40s. I mean, just in our country is more of a prevalent thing, but truly, the foundation of our country was founded on cannabis culture.
In Jamestown, it was the law. If you didn't grow hemp, you'd be put in jail. Because they'd go out they'd light the little lanterns, along the street lamps, and that was all hemp oil. They couldn't get a little whale oil.
You got to have that oil.
Got to have
that. What about the Civil War?
Exactly.
What do they need then? I mean, for the clothing, for the suits, you were forced to grow.
The Constitution is written on hemp.